afternoon and welcome to this class on pain management hypnosis offered to us by NKA, and I'd like to introduce our instructor. His name is Lon Wofford, and he has over the past few years developed his skill in helping people manage their pain. And we all have pain, small or large, but it's necessary for us to really be able to manage that pain so that we can live a full life. And Lon is certified in hypnosis. That's one of the skills that he can help us in developing to help us manage our pain. And this class is for that. One more thing, if you haven't signed in back there, be sure you do before you leave or I'll get in trouble. And I don't want to get in trouble. So welcome to the class, and I'd like to introduce Lon to you.
Thank you. That's okay. The seminar is entitled Analytical Hypnosis for Pain Management. And this is the first seminar. The main topic will be history of hypnosis from ancient to modern times, so we get an overview of what hypnosis is. And then we'll have a practicum, which is just beginning trance experience. So we'll actually work with trance today, and you'll learn firsthand what hypnosis is. The course materials are available for download or review from the website, narrowgatealliance.org. And currently they're just on the home page, so they're not password protected or anything. But as of next week, they'll be moved off to their own web page, and they'll be password protected. The user ID is ANHYP Seminar for Analytic Hypnosis Seminar. And the password is NKA Fall 2012. Now, if you go out to the home page today, there'll be, if you scroll down the page, there will be a PDF version of the syllabus for this course, and it has all this information. So you can just download that PDF, and it will have all of this information, including an outline of the course and everything else. And it's not password protected, like I said. And if you go almost to the bottom of the page, there's a contact form. In case you have any questions or comments or anything, just want to get in touch with me, you can just fill that out, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. You just send me an email. All right, everybody have that? All right, availability of materials. Primary materials such as PowerPoint presentations like this, they'll be available on the day of the seminar. So it's already out there on the website. You can go home and log in, or not just go out to the website right now, and you'll be able to download a PDF version of this PowerPoint presentation. The other materials will be available on the Wednesday following the seminar, except for the videotape. I'll have to edit that, and that may take me a little longer. But all of the other materials will usually be out there by 6 p.m. on Wednesday. So if you know, you're looking for something and it's not there, just send me a note, and we'll find out exactly what's going on with that. Just a little bit about the program of research that went into the design of this particular class. I've spent the last 14 years conducting an integrated research synthesis on 30,281 research items. So it's a fairly large integrated research synthesis. I've reviewed 13,887 books, 6,913 peer-reviewed articles, 8,869 audio files, and 612 video files. So it's fairly comprehensive, it's interdisciplinary, and so the information you're receiving here is the synthesis of all of that research material. Of all of that, of the 30,000 and change, I have entered 4,093 into a bibliography so that it's accessible. and you'll have access to the bibliography. So you'll be able to go and take a look at those. I update the bibliography every day and add more of the items. So sometime in the next 30 or 40 years, I'll have entered all of the research items into the bibliography, and it'll be indexed that way. In addition to that, over the last 14 years, I've also conducted clinical research with approximately 5,000 clients and seminar participants in large groups and small groups and individually, and family oriented. So we've been able to test the materials, we've been able to validate the presentation of the materials so that it's fairly easy to learn. Any questions about that? All right, so what can you expect to learn over the next 8 weeks? We will have 8 90-minute seminars, and they'll be divided in half. The first 45 minutes will be devoted to theory, history, concepts, models, explanatory models, and things like that. The last 45 minutes will be devoted to guided practice. So you're actually going to have hands-on every week with hypnosis. Our objective at the end of this is for you to be able to hypnotize yourself and to hypnotize others. We'll include explanatory models and theories for hypnosis and psychoanalysis. This is analytical hypnosis. So we include a psychoanalytic component as well. You will learn the following hypnotic skills: progressive muscular relaxation, differential muscular relaxation, ideodynamic responses to suggestion. You'll learn how to create powerful, safe, and appropriate suggestions for yourself and for others. You'll learn how to deliver these suggestions effectively, safely, and ecologically to yourself and to others. You'll learn how to measure and modify trance depth. You'll learn how to perform hypnotic age regression for yourself and for others. You'll learn hypnotic revivification, which is different than the regression, although they're very similar. You'll learn how to produce hypnotically induced amnesia, how to produce hypnotically induced analgesia, how to produce hypnotically induced anesthesia. Maybe that's a pretty high-level skill. I don't know if we'll get to that, but you'll at least know how to get to that. So if you can produce analgesia, if you can numb the pain, or if you can reduce the feelings of pain, you're well on the way to actually getting rid of the pain. You'll learn how to recognize, utilize, and modify everyday trance states. You'll learn how to appropriate your own space, which is an exercise that we'll do today, and which forms sort of a key beginning part to any trance work that we do. You'll learn autosuggestions, which is waking suggestions, ideodynamic communication methods. I'll teach you the eye roll trance induction technique, which is a very rapid induction technique. We'll learn eye relaxation exercises, hypnotic language patterns and protocols, hypnotic induction patterns and protocols. You'll learn how to do post-hypnotic suggestions, and anything else that we think of as we go along. But that should keep us pretty busy. Any questions about that? Okay. Let's just take a look at the overview. The first part of Seminar 1 is a knowledge lecture on a brief history of hypnosis from ancient to modern times. So we're going to take a look first at hypnosis in the ancient world. So we're going to look at the time span from 6000 BCE to 1700 CE. BCE stands for before the Common Era. CE stands for the Common Era. We used to call it BC and AD. However, back in the 80s, the scholarly world got together and said they wanted to do this instead. So since a lot of the books that you'll be looking at, if you decide to look at them, use this particular convention, that's what we'll use. So BCE is BC and CE is AD. We'll take a look at the ancient mystery religions, ancient Greek philosophy, ancient Buddhist philosophy, Gnosticism, and early Christianity, and then the alchemists. So we'll just take a brief overview of their application of hypnosis to their particular field. Then we'll take a look at hypnosis in the modern world. And that's from 1700, about 1700 CE to the present time. We'll take a look at contributions from Franz Anton Mesmer, who started it all off, James Gray, James Esdale, Jean-Martin Charcot, Hippolyte Bernam, Auguste Henri Forel, Emile Coué, Sigmund Freud, Clark Hull, Milton Erickson, Richard Bandler, and John Grinder, Theodore Sarden, Theodore Barber, Ernest Hilgard, Andrea Weitzenhofer, Nicholas Peter Spanos, and Edward Jacobson. So we'll just do sort of a blaze through of all of those. So you get an idea of the depth of the research that's been conducted, as well as the historical roots of hypnosis. Okay? Any questions about that quick overview? All right. First knowledge lecture, part 1 is hypnosis in the ancient world. We can trace hypnosis back as far as about 6,000 BCE, and we can't trace it any further back because that's when our written records begin. We know from the written records that it was practiced before that, but we don't know how far before that. All written records begin roughly around 6,000 BCE, and there are records of hypnosis at that time in and around the Indus River Valley, in and around Babylon. It was practiced specifically by the Babylonian mysteries around 2500 BCE. We've got enough of their records to let us know that they were using it. It was practiced by the Eleusinian mysteries between 1800 and 400 BCE, and it was used by the Orphics between 600 and 300 BCE. So we've got enough of the records from that time period to actually see their use of hypnosis. Now, it was secret. Remember, these are mystery religions. Everything they did was secret, punishable by death if you revealed the secret. So we sort of had to go around it and utilize information from the present day that has survived from that time, as well as particular traditions that can trace their roots back to that time. And so we'll talk about that later on in the seminar. We'll actually take a look at some of these older methods of hypnosis. In particular, I'd like you to take a look at and understand mesmerism. There's an actual method that he was using that is based on these old ancient mystery religions. So we'll take one of our 45-minute practicum sessions and we'll actually do that. Because I think, number one, it would be interesting for you, and number two, it is practical. It has practical applications. The primary tenets of all the ancient mystery religions was that human souls are immortal and divine. They all had secret initiation rites, and they all had rigorous training programs, including somatic programs, which would be yoga, tai chi, athletics, all those kinds of things, physical things, meditation, and hypnosis. Hypnosis was a key component of all of these ancient mystery religions. Ancient Greek philosophy, we have the pre-Socratics, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. These guys were all initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries. So they were all high initiates, epochs of the Eleusinian mysteries. So everything that they wrote about was predicated upon their practice of yoga, meditation, and hypnosis in the mystery religions that they practiced. So all of Western thought ultimately derives from those initial practices from the ancient mystery religions. And it comes down to us through the ancient Greek philosophers as well as through the Eastern philosophies as well. So these guys were practicing what we're going to be practicing. And they basically did it almost exactly like we do. We have a little more science behind it, so we understand a little bit more about what's going on. But as far as practice goes, they were doing exactly what we would be doing. Ancient Buddhist philosophy, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, lived between 564 and 483 BCE roughly. He was initiated into the mysteries by his two teachers, Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta. So he had two teachers that we know by name that initiated him into these particular mysteries. He practiced yoga, meditation, and hypnosis, just like Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, and everybody else back then. And he then went on to systematize these disciplines into his Noble Eightfold Path to enlightenment. Yes?
Is that Siddhartha Gautama the same Buddha?
Yes. Yes, the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha. Yeah, he is the Buddha. Yeah, so that's his name. That's his name. So the title Buddha means enlightened one. Okay, so there have been other people who were given the title of Buddha. like Bodhidharma in the 7th century, would have been given the title Buddha, but this one was the original, the one we think about when we talk about Buddhism. He was the founder. Okay, other questions? So we'll be looking at this, and if you're in the meditation class tomorrow, we'll actually be going into great detail about his methodology. Okay, here we'll be focused on hypnosis. There we'll be focused on meditation. Both paths are virtually identical. They have different applications, but they are essentially the same. They stem from the same root systems, and they have exactly the same objectives. We're focused on pain management, and so was he. Gnosticism and early Christianity. From about 325 BCE to 325 CE, which was the date of the first Nicene Council, the Gnostics sort of consolidated all of this ancient mystery religion, the Platonic and Socratic and Aristotelian philosophies, the Eastern philosophies, Zoroastrianism from Persia. All of that stuff was sort of consolidated under the name of Gnosticism. And the reason for this was because Alexander the Great had just conquered the known world, and he had established his great city of Alexandria in Egypt. And so everybody from across the entire planet, basically, was coming to Alexandria. And so we had people from all over the known world speaking many different languages, having many different religious beliefs, and practicing many different mystery religions, all coming to Alexandria. And they all got together, and they all talked among themselves, and what came out of that was Gnosticism. And Gnosticism feeds directly into early Christianity from about 60 or so AD, BC, CE, until 325 CE. The early Christians would have practiced a version of Gnosticism. So that's why this is important. And then, of course, Christianity from 325 CE feeds forward into the present day. Okay, it incorporated all the elements of the mystery religion into an open religion for all. In other words, they promised to get rid of all the mystery. No secrets. Everything is out in the open. They're going to show you exactly how to do it. They're going to tell you exactly what it's for. And they're going to let everybody participate. Whereas before, it was only those select few who came from elite families who were allowed to be initiates into the mystery religions. It was very, very tightly controlled. And like I said, very secret, punishable by death, really gruesome forms of execution for people who broke silence. Here, the Gnostics said, wait a minute, this is useful for everyone. So they began to create a system that was available to everyone. And that, like I said, came into the early parts of Christianity, which had the same exact promise. Okay? They utilized somatics, meditation, and hypnosis in their practices. They were, however, driven underground as heretics in 325 CE. Okay? And finally eliminated right around 450 CE. The last of the outposts was exterminated by the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church at that time, right around 450 CE. So the Gnostics as a group, as an organized group, was just sort of eradicated. Gnostic documents retrieved from Enizur Comedy, which is the Arabic pronunciation as close as I can come to the place where these documents were found. They date back to about 367 CE. So we have actual documents from the Gnostic times that were unearthed in 1945. And I've actually seen them. They came to New York when I was there. And they came to the public library, the big library with the lines out in front. And they had this huge display in the hall there of all of these texts. It was amazing to see them. They had been found by a shepherd out there in this big cave in these big earthen pots. And they were really well preserved. Huge scrolls, big fragments. You could read the writing. So it was very, very impressive. And so they started translating them about 1946, 47. And then we started to get access to them translated into English about 1970. So we can actually take a look at what the Gnostics were talking about. Okay, the alchemists maintained the secrecy because it had been driven underground. Because the Gnostics as a heresy had been eliminated, people who were practicing Gnosticism and the old ancient religions decided they better make it secret again because it was dangerous to profess this. And so what they did was they sort of just went underground and began to practice it in secret, teaching only their fellow family members, friends, and loose societies that kept it secret all the way through. We see them emerge into the open again right around 1500 CE. And from 1500 to 1700 CE, we have bunches, just hundreds of alchemical texts that were printed and published and distributed across Europe. So we have access to that information as well. Now, a lot of it was coded. A lot of it was encoded. It was hard to read. And if you didn't know the code, you couldn't understand what it was talking about. So, we've had a lot of scholarship since then to break the code, so we can actually go back and figure out what they were talking about. And they were talking about exactly what Plato and Aristotle and the Buddha and all of the mystery religions and everybody else were talking about. They practiced, the somatics, the meditation, and the hypnosis in order to achieve an altered state. Okay? Taught predominantly by word of mouth. If you keep it secret, you didn't want to write anything down because that could be hung or burned at the stake. Until about 1440, when they started to actually publish things in encoded versions so that they couldn't be burned at the stake. So anyway, so like I said, we have the alchemists there, we have their documents, and it throws light on all of the preceding stuff. Because it was secret, it was encoded, and now we've broken the code. There's a lot of text out there. So this lets us know a lot of what's going on. We'll take a look at some of the later texts from the late 1800s later on in the course, so we can take a look at some of the kinds of stuff that they were using hypnosis for and how they actually worded it. All right, any questions about that? Hypnosis in the ancient world? So again, the most important point to take away from this right now is that hypnosis and these other techniques are ancient. They are as old as we are. We have been practicing these kinds of things since the very beginning of humankind. And so they're built right into the very foundation and very structure of what we are as human beings. Yeah?
It seems to be then that religion has a lot to do with that.
Oh, yes.
Well, religion is based on philosophy, really.
Yes.
And then from them there is a combination of religion and some sort of chemistry or some of the ancient sciences. Okay, it's a mix of all those things, right?
Yes, yeah, and exactly. And so what we can see in the history of all of this is the sort of cycle where it was hidden, and then it would emerge and be open to the public, and then it would be hidden again. And so each time it went through one of these cycles, there would be more of this merging. Okay? So there'd be more of this merging. And what you find, if you take a look at the history of religions, what you'll find is that there were always two separate pathways in the religion, in any of the religions. There was an exoteric pathway, which was for the masses, and it did not include any of the secrets. It was just the fables and the myths and the stories and the legends told as if they were just legends. And then on the inside, for the initiates, the people who actually practiced all of this stuff, the same myths, the same legends, the same teaching fables would then have a completely different meaning, and they would teach them exactly what they needed to do in order to reach the higher mysteries. So it was always split between the exoteric, which was for the masses, and the esoteric, which was for the elite initiates. Yeah.
Did they ever use the hypnosis with the medical?
Yes. Yeah, and we do. Like,
Not now.
no, then. Yes,
Asia.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they definitely used it. There was, there have been a lot of indicators, Galen, Hippocrates, those other kinds of healers back then will actually literally talk about these kinds of techniques. They, of course, didn't call it hypnosis. But they did talk about altered states. They talked about its usefulness for pain management and for childbirth and for healing the soul, what we would call psychological difficulties, anxiety, depression, those kinds of things. They used it for that a lot. Okay, and so that also comes forward through through this hidden channel. Okay, all of that comes forward through the hidden channel. And so those people who are practicing alchemy, hidden behind the doors, would be doctors and physicians and lawyers and other people who are hiding the fact that they knew this stuff, but would still help people who needed help when they could. Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
yeah, so did that answer your question? Yeah, so that's what happens. It all gets mixed together. Okay, but what we are looking at is that one thread, that one primary idea which runs through all of it. And it doesn't matter what the outer covering is, it doesn't matter what the language is or the epoch or the culture or anything else. It's always the same three ideas. Some kind of physical discipline to work the body, some kind of meditative practice, and some kind of hypnosis. And it's always the same. That's always the same. That never changes. The myths will change, the structures will change inside of the religious institutions, the language that describes all of this stuff will change. But those practices remain constant from the beginning until the present. Unchanged.
Why the religious people were against it?
It was the religious leaders who were against it, specifically in this case, Constantine, the Emperor of Rome, when he called the Council of Nicaea together in 325 CE, he basically called everybody together and he said, look, I'm going to make Christianity the state religion of Rome. So I want you guys to get together and you pick the text that you want in this new religion, and you pick the doctrine that you want to have, and you pick all, how it's going to look in the ecclesiastical hierarchy, and you pick all of that stuff. I don't care. What I do care about are two things. Number one, no women can be permitted anywhere near the levers of power. Okay? This is a male-only club. And that was specific. He said no women allowed in the priesthood. And the second thing was we have to change the official birth date of Jesus from April to December 25th in order to merge the pagan religions currently existing in Rome with this new religion. Because that would then link the myths. That would then link that particular myth to all of the other solar deity myths that go all the way back to 6000 BCE. Okay, so it was a power thing. It was a control thing in the case of Constantine and the Council of Nicaea. He was establishing a new religion. It was a state religion, and this is what it was going to be. And this was the only religion that people would have in Rome and the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, until the present day, because it still exists. It's still here. And the Vatican is still there, and the church hierarchy is still there, and the incredible wealth that the church has amassed over the last, what would that be, 2,400 years? Oh, not quite that, 1,700 years, I guess, is still there. So he built wealth. It lasted a long, long, long time. And essentially what happened was the Roman Empire itself fell shortly thereafter. Within about 100 years, 125 years, it actually fell. The military empire fell, but the church that he had established carried on the Roman Empire, and it then dominated all of Europe up until about 1700. So again, built well. And that's why they did all of those things. That's why they made the changes they made. That's why they made the choices that they made. And that's why they stamped out all the heresies, because they didn't want anybody else competing for the power. We've seen this before. We've seen this earlier in times, and we've seen it even recently. For example, in Soviet Russia, when the Soviet Union was formed in 1917, they basically got rid of all the existing churches and created one state religion, so that they could maintain control. So it's always a control factor. Is always part of it. There's always a political element to this that we have to consider, if we're taking a look at the entire history, to try to understand why the things happen the way they happen. Nothing out there happens by chance. There's always some intelligence behind it, directing it towards a goal, towards a purpose. Okay, did that answer your question? All right. Now, hypnosis in the modern world begins with Mesmer. All right, and he lived from 1734 until 1815. he inaugurated the age of modern psychotherapy in 1779 with the publication of an 88-page monograph entitled Memoir on the Discovery of Animal Magnetism. Now, notice the dates. Okay, alchemy was in full force from 1500 to 1700. So he is an alchemist. He was trained in alchemy. He read all of the alchemical texts. He was actually trained by people who now call themselves Rosicrucians. All right, the alchemists vanished in 1700, and the Rosicrucians seamlessly took their place. The Rosicrucians begin about 1605, and they just sort of seamlessly merged with the alchemical tradition. And so by 1700, the alchemists are gone, and the Rosicrucians are taking over. So Mesmer and others around his time were alchemists. They read all the texts. They were familiar with Paracelsus and all of his writings. They were actually trained in the methodology, these ancient techniques, these secret techniques. And so he is now, again, trying to bring it out in the open and make it available to the public. He is saying, I can take this alchemical knowledge that I have, and I believe that what I'm dealing with here is a form of magnetism, just like the magnet in a lodestone, but instead of being a mineral magnetism, it is an animal magnetism, because we're animals. And this body and other animal bodies produce this magnetic field. So he's taking ideas from physics, from Newton, from some of the other people who have been writing around this time, Galileo, Descartes, all of these other people, and he's trying to say, what I've learned in my alchemical studies, the practices, the hypnosis, the meditation, the somatic stuff, looks to me like it is relying upon some kind of magnetic field that is produced by a living animal body. That's what he's saying. That's what animal magnetism is. He kept his magnetic methods secret from almost everybody. He didn't train many people. He taught a few students the actual procedures, and then, of course, it died with him when he died in 1850. However, the techniques that he did teach survived in those few students that he taught, and they were able to write things and bring it forward to the present day. So we can actually practice what he was practicing, and we'll do that. We'll take some time and we'll actually do that. So we'll practice classical mesmerism, and I'll show you the animal magnetism that he was playing with. And we'll bring it up to date with modern scientific evaluations and terminology and other things so that we can actually validate that what he's talking about is real, that it does have healing capacity, and that, again, it is ancient and goes back as far as we go back. Okay? Questions about Mesmer? So he started this all off. And what was termed mesmerism and animal magnetism transforms itself over the next several years into what we now know as hypnosis. James Braid is responsible for that. He was a physician, a British physician, born in 1795, died in 1860. He saw one of Mesmer's students mesmerize somebody, and he was captivated by that, because what he saw was real. The French government, the Parisian government, the city government of Paris, when Mesmer was in Paris, convened a panel, one of whose members was Benjamin Franklin, to investigate Mesmer and his claims. And they said, we don't believe in animal magnetism, which was a lie. Why was it a lie? Because they were all alchemists. They all knew what he was trying to say. They wanted to keep it secret. So they denied the existence of animal magnetism. But they said, whatever he's doing is working. He's got cures. He's cured people. You know those people, because he's actually talked about them. He's written letters to the editor. You know them, because they went around in your circle. So what he's doing is real. It's actually having real effects in the real world with real people. He's curing people. So whatever he's doing is having an effect. It's just not animal magnetism, because we don't want to talk about that. All right? So Braid sees this demonstration, and he's just fascinated by it. So he goes and has this person teach him how to do it. And so what he does is he now takes it into the laboratory and he begins to evaluate what is going on. All right? And he coins the term neurohypnotism, meaning, nervous sleep, basically, in 1841, when he's giving all these lectures about this new process. And it's based on his initial assumption that the state produced by mesmerism, you know, that state where everybody's eyes are closed and they're sort of zoned out there, was similar to sleep. He changed his mind later on and he said, I wish I'd never used the term hypnotism because it's not sleep. It has no relationship to Hypnos, the god of sleep. This is something entirely different. It's physiologically different. It is experientially different. But by then it was too late because everybody liked this term, hypnotism. So, I mean, it was everywhere now. Publications, books, everybody was talking about it, so it was too late. He's regarded as the father of modern hypnotism because his critical investigations of mesmerism provided a scientific foundation for all future research, including the research today. James Esdale, 1808 to 1859, published a really important book in 1846, Mesmerism in India, and its practical application in surgery and medicine. He reported 261 major surgical procedures. We're talking, you know, cutting out big tumors, very painful kinds of operations, which were conducted without any anesthesia in his military hospital in Calcutta, India. They didn't have any, they had anesthetics available, but they didn't have them in India. So he got some local kids together, taught them how to do mesmerism, and then he had them mesmerize these 261 patients, and then he performed surgery. Not all of them, you know, had no pain. I mean, there were very few who had absolutely no pain, but most of them were able to get through the procedure with reduced pain or very little pain, and they all recovered very rapidly. So this is a milestone demonstrating once again that mesmerism works. Whatever's going on here is real. Okay, if we don't want to talk about animal magnetism as the causative agent, that's fine, but something real is happening there. Jean-Martin Charcot, born 1825 and died in 1893, observed mesmerism during his youth and studied the works of Gray and Esdale while he was a student. So he was impressed by this. He believed that hypnosis and hysteria is what we now call depression, anxiety, that kind of thing, okay, were related, and only hysterics could be hypnotized, which meant that men couldn't be hypnotized because only women got hysteria. Okay? So he was, you know, scientifically he was a little off the beaten path here because his conclusions were obviously wrong, but his practice was good. Once again, he learned it, he was able to practice it, and he was able to demonstrate it all over, you know, France. He trained Sigmund Freud in the hypnotic techniques while Freud was an intern at the Salpêtrière Hospital. Okay? And it was the first large-scale application of hypnotherapy for psychological disorders. Once again, it works. Whatever it is, it works. Hippolyte Barnum, 1840 to 1919, was the founder of the Nancy School of Hypnosis. So instead of being in Paris, he was in Nancy. And so they were sort of rivals, him and Charcot. Considered suggestion. This is the first time we hear suggestion brought up as a causative agent to be the cause of hypnotic phenomena. All right, published Hypnosis and Suggestion in Psychotherapy, this one right here. Okay, The Nature and Uses of Hypnotism in 1884. So this is the first time we get a major publication on hypnosis alone. And it's Barnum's work talking about hypnosis as suggestion. So we're going to take that idea and use it in our practicum today. Okay? He also trained Freud. So Freud went from Paris down to Nancy and trained with Barnum as well. Auguste-Henri Forel, 1848 to 1931, was a neurologist. And he was the co-discoverer of the neuron theory of neurological structure. So he's a heavyweight. He is a heavyweight researcher. He's also interested in mesmerism and hypnosis, okay? And he applied his conception of neuroanatomy to the phenomena of hypnosis in this book here, okay? And so, again, we just have this continuation, and he buys into the Nancy School theory. This stuff is suggestion. Whatever is going on because of suggestion. That's the causative agent here. Okay? Now, Emile Coué, 1857 to 1926, he studied with Barnum in 1901. He's a pharmacist. He's not a psychologist or a physician. He's a pharmacist. He constructed a method of waking hypnosis because the method that they were using for hypnosis back then was really authoritative. All right, basically they would sit there, and the person would be there, and they would command them to sleep, yelling at them, sleep, 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 and then they'd walk over and put their hand on their forehead and push, sleep. Okay, well this didn't work for everyone. This worked for like 1 out of 5 people. Would actually enter into a trance state using this. So it was kind of hit or miss. It depended on your personality and the setting and everything else. So Coué was saying, wait a minute, if this is true, if it's based on suggestion, we should be able to do it without all this falderall. We should be able to do it in a waking state. So he began to develop what he called autosuggestion. Okay? Doesn't require an induction procedure and can be practiced by anyone, not just that 1 out of 5, while they were awake. And he published Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion. He published it first in England in 1920 and then here in 1922. And then How to Practice Suggestion and Autosuggestion. And finally, My Method, including the American impressions of his tour through America in 1922. So he came to America in 1922 and he was all the rage. And basically all over the country, the newspapers were talking about his new method of autosuggestion and his famous phrase, every day in every way, I am feeling better and better. That was his autosuggestion. That was his pattern for his autosuggestions. All right. Sigmund Freud, technically Sigmund Freud, which is hard to say for us, 1856 to 1939. He published 7 papers on hypnosis between 1888 and 1892, including translations of and introductions to works by Charcot and Bannon. So he got back from his internship with them. They had just published these books that we saw here, and he said, hey, I'll translate them into German and I'll do a foreword for them. And they said, sure, go ahead. So he did that. However, he abandoned hypnosis as a therapeutic method in favor of his newly created method of psychoanalysis in 1895. He abandoned it for 2 reasons. Number 1, because only 1 out of 5 could be hypnotized. And number 2, he discovered from using hypnosis that people were very, 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 very easy to manipulate. He could implant false memories. He could have them do things that they would not normally do. He could change their moods. He could do all of these things. And he saw that he didn't intend to do any of these things. He just inadvertently did all of those things. And so he said, wait a minute, this is too dangerous. I cannot do this with my patients because I'm interfering with their health and well-being. So he backed off and said, I don't want to do hypnosis. It's way too dangerous. I'm just going to develop this sort of, hypnotically based but very, very controlled method of psychoanalysis. And so he did. Very interesting transition there. Clark L. Hull was a professor of psychology at Yale University. And he was the first of the 20th century experimentalists. All right? Experimental research was published in Hypnosis and Suggestibility in 1933, confirming that anesthesia and amnesia were valid hypnotic phenomena. So again, in the laboratory, he was able to confirm that this does work. You can produce anesthesia, you can produce amnesia in test subjects, in experimental subjects. Okay? However, because of the new push towards behaviorism and non-state kinds of interpretations of phenomena, he didn't think it was necessary for there to be a trance state, a hypnotic state, animal magnetism, all of these kinds of things around the results. He thought that there could be simpler explanations for the results. Okay? He trained Milton H. Erickson. Okay? Who died in 1980, born in 1901. The world's greatest hypnotherapist, the world's greatest hypnotist, bar none. Okay? 30,000 or so people worldwide, people who didn't even he didn't even speak their language, he was able to hypnotize them on stage in front of, large groups of physicians and psychologists. almost single-handedly convinced the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association to include hypnosis as a legitimate therapeutic method. By himself, almost. There were others who helped, but it was he who actually convinced them that this was real and that it needed to be included in the diagnostic and diagnosis and treatment. He was the founder of the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis, again in 1959. When the APA adopted it in 1959 as a therapeutic method, he founded the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis at the same time. Developed the Ericksonian method of hypnosis, which utilizes natural trance phenomena to accomplish the induction, treatment, and termination phases. He is slick. Okay, he can hypnotize you just by hand, just with a handshake. All right, I mean, very powerful, very, very powerful. We're still studying his techniques, trying to imitate them, so trying to understand how they work. I've got videos of him. He's amazing.
I saw a TV program that there is a gentleman that he was doing it just, for passing by.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's one, he would issue a challenge, if there's anybody in here who thinks I can't hypnotize him, come on up. And so one guy said, a big guy said, you can't hypnotize me. So he walks up to the stage, and Erickson is sitting down, and he halfway gets up and extends his hand as if he's going to shake the guy's hand, and the guy reaches forward to take his hand, and then Erickson takes his hand away and sits back down. So the guy's stuck there like this. And he can't move.
I don't remember this gentleman's name, but it was a show on a television that I saw.
Yeah, and he was probably trained by Erickson. Yeah, probably, if it wasn't Erickson.
It was amazing. I never have seen anybody doing it like he did.
Absolutely.
As simple and
and
as
very powerful.
effective and powerful.
Yep, and very powerful. If we could learn to do it like him, it would be a lot easier to heal. Richard Bandler and John Grinder were co-developers of neuro-linguistic programming, which is a big deal. Okay, at least it was in the late 70s and early 80s. It still is out there. I'm certified in NLP, and there's a lot of other people out there who practice NLP. It's a set of theoretical and practical models for performing hypnotherapy based on Fritz Perls' Gestalt therapy, Virginia Satir's family therapy, and Milton Erickson's hypnotherapy. So they basically modeled these three master psychotherapists and created neuro-linguistic programming based upon what they saw. Okay? So it's slick, it's easy to use, it's very powerful, it's also extremely dangerous. Okay? Very dangerous. Because it is so slick, because it's so subtle, because it's easy to misuse. Yeah.
Is that, you see on TV this Bennington guy whacking somebody in the forehead and they fall down?
That's
Is that it?
That's not NLP, that's the old method.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the, exactly, that's what's called a rapid induction technique.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other question I had is, pain in some cases is beneficial.
Yes.
Because it keeps you from moving and making yourself worse.
Exactly.
So where do you draw the line there?
Well, if you are, if your skill level gets to the point where you can actually eliminate the pain totally, then what you'll have to do is you'll have to build in a sort of ecological test loop, so that if you start to overdo it, the pain will return a little bit. I mean, we can, if we're at that level, if we can actually do it at that level, then we can build in programs that will protect us. Okay, again, that's a very high level of skill. Okay, we may have to practice a long, long time before we reach that level of skill. Here, I don't know how much our level of skill will improve. It'll improve quite a bit, but I don't know that we'll get to that level. Okay, but when we get, I mean, by the time you got to that level, you would understand enough about the way you function, so that you'd be able to just build in these ecological loops to protect you. Does that make sense? Because you're right. If we don't want, if our knee were broken, we don't want to get rid of the pain and go run a marathon. It would cause severe damage. In fact, there are people out there who are born without any sense of pain, and they hurt themselves I mean, they kill themselves. Because they don't, I mean, they burn themselves, they trip, they fall, they break bones. You know, and it's just, you know, it's very sad. They lead very horrible lives because they don't have that feedback that tells them don't do that. So yeah, that's a very valid concern. And like I said, there are ways around that to build it in so that it is ecologically balanced and you don't have to worry about hurting yourself. Mostly you've got to remember that this thing right here, this is very intelligent on its own. All right? I mean, it digests food, it breathes, it handles, you know, 20 or 30 trillion individual cells all doing their individual thing at a molecular level. So it's smarter than we are. and it's really hard for us to override the native intelligence of this organism. Very difficult for us to do that. So even if we got to the point where we were able to just cut off the pain totally, I don't think the organism would permit us to hurt ourselves. It's really smart. And we'll discover that. We'll discover its intelligence as we move forward. Okay. All right. We're at the halfway mark now, so I'm going to stop with Sarvan. We'll pick up with Sarvan next time in the knowledge lecture. So we'll just go ahead here. We're going to very quickly, actually, let me change the tape here. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm making videotapes, so they'll be out on the web. They'll be out on the internet. You can just go watch them. And from the videotapes, I will make transcripts, which includes all of your questions, not just my input, but all of your questions and everything. So it will be a more full account of what happened here. And then we'll also have the video record, so you can always go back to this and review, or catch up, like if you have to be gone.